Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with your weekly Elder Scrolls Blades news update. This time around we're not talking about a patch or the latest changes coming to Elder Scrolls Blades, but rather the success that this mobile title has been met with. The following information comes from SensorTower.com, who I will have linked in the description down below, but we're going to be talking about whether or not we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of our ancestors. But really, this information will be quite disappointing to some given some of the shady tactics used in Blades, so let's get into the information and we'll discuss afterwards. It's been 1 month since Bethesda launched the Elder Scrolls Blades into early access on Apple's App Store, bringing the immensely popular role-playing series to mobile for the first time. Since then, Sensor Tower store intelligence data shows that more than $1.5 million have been spent in the game by intrepid players delving into the beta release. Yeah, so this is just when the game was available on Apple's App Store. Obviously now it is available on some Android devices, but this is just information collected from the App Store. The Elder Scrolls Blades has been installed by more than 1.3 million early adopters so far, with more than 1 million of those signing on during its first week in early access. Players were initially only able to enter the game after receiving an invite. Recently, Bethesda opened up access to the game to anyone registered on the Bethesda.com website. More interestingly is this data. The majority of spending by these players, about 73%, has come from the United States, which accounts for approximately 1.1 million of the total. The game's second largest market for revenue so far is Great Britain, at close to 5% of player spending, or about $75,000 in gross earnings. So hey, shout out to all my UK viewers out there. You guys are fighting the good fight. You guys understand. Our data shows that so far, the Elder Scrolls Blades has earned nearly $1.20 per download on average. Players have spent an average of close to $50,000 per day since the game launched on March 27th. Looking at Bethesda's most well-known mobile release, Fallout Shelter grossed an estimated $8.7 million in its first month on 4.4 million installs. However, unlike the Elder Scrolls Blades, that was launched in full release when it arrived on June 14th, 2015. So for starters, Elder Scrolls Blades has not met that Fallout Shelter level of success, but we also have to remember how Fallout Shelter was announced. It was during the peak of the Fallout 4 hype period. It was announced alongside it. It was the biggest surprise of the show outside of the release date, I'd say, and we knew that it was a game and only a game, and that spending in its current form was not forced, which surprised a lot of people given how polluted the mobile market was at the time. More interesting to me is that the game has earned nearly $1.20 per download on average, and this is exactly how companies get you. And I'm not soloing out Bethesda here, okay? A lot of companies do this. I call it the death of 1,000 cuts, because everyone around the globe's like, what's $1 gonna hurt? What's $2 gonna hurt? Certainly that can't add to the problem, but when you multiply that by 1 million people, suddenly your $1 really does hurt, because what happens is when money is fed into these early access titles that are shadow nerfing loot, that is changing the game without telling you, and is neutering your experience, forcing you to pay, that is when you are fueling bad business practices. But what this also does is supports an argument that myself and Carrick of ACG have been making on the podcast for years now, which is that the games industry is a lot larger than the YouTube sphere that we are in right now. There are much more people out there who just download their games, don't get involved in the conversation. If they want to spend money, they do so, and they don't care about the impact. That's why awareness needs to be spread, and why we keep making these types of videos to hopefully reach more and more people so they understand that, hey, it's cool if you spend money, but just know that if you try to spend money in the right places, maybe you'll get better products down the line. As for the 1.3 million early adopters, I expected a solid player base to enter Elder Scrolls Blades. I think a lot of folks still get a bit happy at the thought of Fallout Shelter and how well done the original version of that game was, whereas Elder Scrolls Blades maybe could have repeated the same success. And once again, I stand by a statement I have reiterated multiple times since my review, which is that this is a legitimately good game, just underneath a bunch of bad microtransactions. It's quite reminiscent of actually Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is another game that I thought was fantastic, but it was mired by microtransactions. However, that game really reworked the entire framework of it. Now, why is this, I guess, concerning? It's not just the success of Bethesda, because maybe these funds could be repurposed into future titles, presumably Starfield. That would be excellent to see, but I'm not holding my breath, because Fallout 4 and Shelter made a ton of cash, probably more than any other Bethesda products, and we didn't see any of that money clearly repurposed into Fallout 76. My concern really actually lies with the idea of why would Bethesda directly listen to feedback when this game is making boatloads of cash doing its nefarious deeds. That's what concerns me, and why we always see companies strategically working out responses, not being on top of big fixes. We actually saw a similar thing just happen recently with Fallout 76, where there are still a lot of things plaguing Fallout 76, but Bethesda hastily added in repair kits, which I don't think anyone was demanding, and if they were, it was not in the way they implemented them, which is microtransactions. Still, it's strange that Bethesda wanted to get those in as soon as possible when there are things that still need to be fixed with this game. And it's the same thing that goes with microtransactions and anything that's bringing the company money, which I have to imagine as the company owners of Bethesda, that's probably a bit of a double-edged blade, right? Because you do want to satisfy your consumers. You don't want to kill off your core fan base, the people who want you to succeed and the people who want to buy your products if certain things are satisfied. But also, when you see all that money coming in, what's going to stop you as a business? Because your goal is to make money and stay afloat, which naturally brings in the conversation of greed.
I'm only asking for enough to feed me kids.
This happens far too often, where it can corrupt the vision of a company who once led the charge for RPGs and open worlds, and now they are succumbing to greedy tactics like this and not seeing the bigger picture. Once again, if this was the case, like with a lot of developers, most notably we'll say CD Projekt Red, with its DLC for The Witcher 3 and a lot of it being free, and we can see the impact of, for example, Blood and Wine being an excellent expansion that clearly had funds repurposed into the project. That type of stuff really benefits consumers, both casual and hardcore. But it's ultimately frustrating when we see a lot of money, even Fallout 76 to some extent did not sell so abysmally bad that Bethesda didn't make money on it. They absolutely did make money on it, just probably not as much as they would have hoped to with, for example, a Fallout 4. But when we see so much money going into Bethesda and then we don't see products popping out sporting how, okay, this is clearly a company who has a lot of money to spend, it becomes frustrating. Now, we could argue that in some of their published IPs, for example, a Prey or a Rage, we are seeing that money spent, and I will be the first to say I am so on board with Rage. I think that game looks fantastic. I am hyped to the high heavens for that one, and very rarely am I nowadays, outside of, I'd say this year, Kingdom Hearts 3, The Outer Worlds, and of course, Cyberpunk 2077. It's a very short list, but Rage 2 did manage to crack it because that is looking fantastic. And so hopefully that'll be a sign that Bethesda is looking to invest more in their products, and that hopefully we can expect more of that quality from them in the future. Obviously, I come from the perspective as someone who is disappointed in Bethesda, but wants them to succeed in the way they did in the past. I don't think they'll ever get back to that poster boy of the industry status that they once were at for many years, where everyone would look at them and go, this is the one remaining AAA company that gets it and doesn't really betray its consumers and hasn't succumbed to greedy tactics. I don't expect them to ever get back there, but I think there could be a happy medium found where Bethesda can understandably, to some extent, be a business, make their money, but not in a way that sacrifices the game, where, for example, 76 struggles to get patches that fix things fans are complaining about, or in the case of Elder Scrolls Blades, where we see a lot of money coming in, so they can technically delay their urgency to get on top of the game and start implementing fixes or announcing stuff they nerfed that was technically shadow nerfed, but data miners discovered. That's the problem with today's industry, really, is we have information coming from data miners. Companies aren't properly communicating. And this is getting a little more broad than I anticipated, but it's important to address because it's not just Bethesda. Bethesda is not the only one pulling the rug out from under you. Plenty of companies, most recently actually is NetherRealm with Mortal Kombat 11, has its information being announced by data miners. People are constantly unearthing data from the games that companies have yet to announce, and it's frustrating because they want us to, for example, pay for a season pass, and we don't know what's in the season pass, but they know, and it's in the DLC files, so why not just let us know then and there? They want their money up front so that you can purchase and not reverse the decision, and that is certainly frustrating, and more communication needs to be had on both sides of the industry to engage in a dialogue and to improve the circumstances for an industry that's growing. Anyway, I will cut it there because I will get more and more ranty and fly more and more off topic, but I just thought that this could lead into a much bigger problem that the industry is facing, and I wanted to focus on that today. So let me know what you think of this information in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. Do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that as it fuels all the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.